ride around Moscow when we went on the boat trip, and there was a little lady, a little Russian lady that came back to where we were all singing on the back of the boat. And she came back and she tried to sing with us in her language, and she was just kind of moving along with us with the music. And when we were done, I went over to her and I sat down and I spoke a little Russian to her, and she spoke to me. And I had the translator say what she wanted to say, and she said to me, she said, well, I hope you will always be as happy as you are today. And that just tickled me pink, because here this lady saw everybody smiling and everybody happy, but, you know, she knew that we were on a trip, that it's not the kind of thing that lasts, you know, and I guess maybe after seeing some hard times herself could say, you know, wish us the best, and I just wanted to cry.
A boat ride on the Moscow River was the first chance we had to see or meet any Russian people. We're the Trenton State College Singers under the direction of Gordon Myers. That's me. I took my wife Harriet and son Christopher along, and they sang with us. It was the summer of 1977. We sang concerts in the Soviet Union and in Romania. It was our mission to make friends through our music. And commerce free from fetters, prove mankind our all relation. Yankee Doodle be divine, Yankee Doodle dandy, beneath the fig tree and the vine. Sing Yankee.
We have a greeting from the state of New Jersey to Russia and Romania, which the governor and Senator Feldman and the House Speaker Hamilton will also be signing.
Sit down, Senator. We'll sign this. Why don't you sit down? You're not going to sing anything for us today,
no? No, we'll save that till we get back.
What are you going to sing for the Russians and the Romanians?
Well, Governor, we're taking a part of Yankee Doodle fought here to Moscow. We're going to share some of our bicentennial celebration with them.
Well, I'm happy to.
What Governor Brendan T. Burns signed said, in part, whenever people gather together to share cultural, artistic, and educational endeavors, the bonds of friendship which exist among all nations become evident, and differences in language, custom, and tradition become unimportant. We were traveling under the auspices of Friendship Ambassadors, dedicated to helping young American performing groups to travel to foreign countries for the purpose of friendship.
From what I've been told, I think that the people live very modestly. They don't have a lot of luxuries. They don't make a big to-do about their own opinions about government. Their ideology is very different over there, and everyone sort of has to think along the same lines. And
that the people are quieter and more fearful than we are, and they're more reserved, and that they're not probably as affectionate and as emotional on the surface as we are.
I think they could be a little bit apprehensive about us coming over, being that we are from a foreign and totally different country. But I think that they will be glad to learn from us and see what we are really like, just as we'll be glad to do the same with them.
Oh, I think they'll be glad that we're coming. I think they're looking forward to it. I hope so, anyway.
Oh, I don't know about that. I'm probably going to miss all the Americanized foods like pizza and hamburgers and stuff like that.
Our country was 200 years old in 1976. The Trenton State College Singers gave 227 performances of Yankee Doodle Fought Here for more than 84,000 school children and adults to celebrate. Here is a medley of early American songs with which we share a bit of our bicentennial. In truth, we've brought Yankee Doodle to Moscow.
And commerce free from fetters, prove because they could not see.
Moscow is absolutely beautiful. The cathedrals remind me of fairy tales. There's one cathedral which reminds me of Hansel and Gretel's gingerbread house. It's just gorgeous. It's a beautiful, beautiful city. The thing that strikes me the most is you'll be taking a picture of like this ancient fairy tale cathedral, and in the background it'll be like a skyline or a skyscraper of some sort. It's a very, very modern, yet they've preserved their ancient things very, very well. It's beautiful.
Our trip was more than singing concerts. Our Sputnik guide, Irina, took us to Red Square, the heart of contemporary Russian culture. It's here that people from all parts of the Soviet Union come and stand in line for hours to see Lenin's tomb.
I have to admit that I was ready. I was absolutely prepared. I was ready for grayness, and I was ready for the doldrums to set in as soon as I stepped into Moscow. I know several people that have been there, and they had said, watch out, it's going to be gray and you're going to be disappointed. And I wasn't. And, you know, people walked around, and I expected these people to be wearing grays and blacks with little babushkas on and, you know, sweeping the streets carefully and meticulously, and I didn't see that. I saw people that looked modern, that looked they were maybe not cordial, and they were maybe not smiling as they strolled down the street. And I kept equating New York and Moscow, and I kept seeing the people, and I kept waiting for something negative to happen. And to be absolutely honest, there weren't too many times when that negative thing happened.
A better comparison all the way around would be Washington, D.C. Because if you go into Washington, you see the same sort of architecture, the same sort of monuments, and it's a show place.
I know we were prepared for all kinds of things, the unknown, and I think everybody had sort of gritted their teeth and was ready to put up with whatever they had to. But I was more impressed with the similarities, and to the point maybe of stretching it sometimes and drawing parallels where maybe they were a little tenuous to things in our own society.
You see, Vladimir Ilyich Lenin died in 1924, and every man and woman wanted to see the leader and the founder of the Communist Party.
Oh, I think so. If we're here, you have to see something as important as Lenin's tomb is to the Russians. It's it's the heart of the whole country.
I thought it was very impressive. It was worth waiting in line for. It was different than I expected. He was out in full view with glass around him and very well preserved.
It was a very long line, and it was dark. It was a very solemn situation.
In the United States, we get the feeling that the Russians are some sort of monsters. We're kind of related that, I think, in school. And just the way we're taught about their system of government and the way that they live. And I found it totally different. I found that they were pretty much like we are. They enjoy eating and drinking and going out and having a good time. And that the really big difference between their country and ours is the government and not the people.
It's a nice city. It's clean. It's surprising, though. Isn't that the feeling of most cities where you have rushing everywhere? It's like, well, there's people walking and buses and stuff, but there's not like bicycles and motorbikes and, not the usual hurry and scurry that you see. You seem to think of when you think of a city. It's much quieter.
I notice people in Moscow are very reserved. You don't see people jumping around laughing. You don't see kids on skateboards or families sitting out in the stoop laughing, drinking beer, joking. Everything is very uniform. There's a lot of order.
Well, we went down Gorka Street, which is a street made up of small little shops. And the shops are specialties, like there's hats in one shop, scarves in another, etc. And we had gone into this little shop and we had wanted to buy things, and I had seen this box, which was wooden box, hand-painted. It was beautiful, and I really wanted to buy it. But the shops are different. They're used, and there's a desk in front. All the merchandise is behind the desk. You can't get it yourself. So we became expert pointers. Like, it would be like this, and then down farther, because the woman would have to get it for you. It would be like this type of thing. And you really learn how to communicate. And it turns out that what you do is she shows you the merchandise, and then you have to go with a slip saying how much the thing costs. You have to go over to the cashier, pay for it, bring the slip to the woman, and then she'll give it to you. It's a lot different. So we had to sit there and watch people for about 5 to 10 minutes before we realized how to possibly do this thing. And we finally realized it between the money changing and everything and the pointing. We finally bought it. It was really, really a lovely thing because it made you feel good that you were able to communicate and that you were able to, on your own, without an interpreter, get through. And this woman was really nice about it. And then we had left the shop and we had tried to look for currency exchange, try to find a bank of some sort. So I ran around screaming, does anybody speak English? And we finally found this woman that spoke a little, and I had said to her, bank, and she didn't understand me. And I was trying to think of what to do, and I finally said to her, dollars for rubles. And she understood me, and then we went, she went next door. We went next door and we were able to converse, and it was really nice because for like an hour and a half we were American and we knew it. We were able to make ourselves understood in a foreign country, and we were able to do things that we wanted to, and it was just very rewarding.
There was a very nice lady who noticed that I was standing in front of the beverage machine. I didn't know how much money to put in. I didn't even know what was coming out of the machine. And the drink came out, and I noticed it was a glass and it wasn't paper. And everybody was drinking out of the same glass, and I noticed that wherever we went in the Soviet Union, they all use the same glass, which cuts down on waste, but it's not very sanitary. There weren't any neon signs or anything, which is okay, because it brought out the architecture more, you know. It made it seem much more pure and artistic or whatever. It sort of cut down the trashiness of being a big city. There wasn't litter on the street. It was just the gorgeous architecture and a lot of busy people running around, going to wherever they had to go and not hanging around, which is kind of nice in a way.
Were held in Moscow. There is a special place where communist congresses are held in Moscow. That is the great Kremlin Palace, the Palace of Congresses, as we call it. It is situated on the territory of the Kremlin. It is the newly building, and
They took us to the countryside, to a rural town called Zargorsk. And we had a chance to shop around the marketplaces and buy a couple of things. But the most interesting thing was the monastery. It's still existing. But while walking in and out, there seemed to be something that just wasn't right.
It's like a big piece of artwork that somebody just carved out. It's gorgeous. It's like a fairyland. Everything I see is like a fairyland. Can't believe it.
I find it very awe-inspiring. I really never expected to find something like this here. The pageantry and the reverence that I received or felt when I was inside the chapel there was just really unbelievable. The tradition and the ages of some of the people in there is quite touching, quite moving.
I'm glad to see that, you know, there still is church left. I was really surprised to see so many people. I had a totally different idea that, you know, churches were closed and they weren't allowed to practice at all.
Well, like she said, it's one of the few monasteries that are left that are still working.
It appears that the churches are allowed to be functioning for tourist trade. I felt bad that these little old ladies who had just had communion were having to push their way past me to get out of the church after they'd had their service. And I think that's depressing. I don't feel right about it.
Some of us experienced our first overnight train ride in a sleeper from the Republic of Russia to the Republic of Latvia on the Baltic Sea.
Sing a song, sing a song, sing out loud.
Good evening. We are the Trenton State College Singers from New Jersey in America. And we are very happy to be here in Riga.
Now a few words about the city. The city was founded in the 9th or 10th century, but chronicles said that the city was founded only in 1201. Riga became the basic point to seize all the territory further than Riga, that is the territory of Latvia. After 1236, there was an uprising against the Germans, and the power was transferred to the city organization. I don't know how to say it in English, perhaps magistrates. And from the whole territory of Latvia, Germans were sent off. In 1939, there were already some uprisings or rebels against this fascism. There was bitter struggle against fascists on Latvian territory.
While listening to Irina talk about the Baltic states and how they were incorporated into the Soviet Union, many of us realized that what she said was very different from what we had learned about it. But of course, we didn't say anything.
On the 20th of August 1940, the People's Meeting of Latvia decided to join the Soviet Union.
Last night when we had a free night, or the night before, said they couldn't get into any discos or bars or anything like that. But I was able to get into one. I passed by, and a lady inside that apparently worked there or something pulled me in and sat me down and gave me a drink. And she evidently wanted to buy American goods. She told me that the businessmen here, in quotes, buy jeans for 100 rubles and sell them for 200. I think she may have been exaggerating a little bit.
I like this city more than Moscow. I think it's a friendlier city. It's different. The architecture is totally different from Moscow. Not as ornate, but it's still very beautiful. I don't feel necessarily like I am in a Russian city. It reminds me a lot of just any old small city, or just old. It's very old, but it isn't that much different from what it would be at home.
Nearly 600,000 people were taken to Germany and were killed here on the territory of Latvia during the Great Patriotic War.
Beyond this gate, the earth mourns. These are the few acres of land where a Nazi concentration camp was located during World War II. 100,000 people died here. To those of us whose homeland has never been invaded, the visit to Solace Pills was an emotional and overwhelming experience. We were told the creators of these memorials were awarded the Lenin Prize.
The name is Paul Revere, and there's a guy that says his own weather's clear.
On 50 Valentine, put on the morning line. The guy has got been figured at 5 to 9.
They dared me to go in.
This guy says the horse has 10.
It's cold. It's no worse than some days on Atlantic City, Asbury Park. It's cold.
We met an unusual choir named Ave Soul in a little schoolhouse almost on the Baltic shores, not too far from Riga. They sounded professional, but they were just regular people like ourselves who loved to sing together.
When we sang and when we saw that group, it was just the most amazing feeling I'd ever had in my life. I've never been in a place where I felt so comfortable so much of the time. And I never saw so many people that I felt so close to so quickly. It wasn't like being in a foreign country.
And I was getting all ready to sing, and their conductor asked me to conduct. Well, ye gods, to have that many people of the two countries together and singing together was an emotional experience. Half the kids were in tears and couldn't sing.
I've only had a couple really moving experiences since I've come over here from New York, and yesterday was one of them. We met with one of the choirs of Riga, that was an amateur choir, and we sang first, our choir sang first. But first of all, it was just the idea of singing for another group who really appreciated and understood your music, and they really showed much appreciation for it. And then they sang for us, and at the end we all got together and we sang a spiritual Swing Low Sweet Chariot. And it was very natural at first, you know, that we all got up there and kind of mingled together and we sang together. But about halfway through the song, well, I have to tell, it's rather a personal effect that it had on me, because I lost my father about not even a year ago. And all of a sudden I just felt him very near to me as I was singing Coming for to Carry Me Home. And then I realized, too, that I was in the Soviet Union. I said, wow, I'm over here away from my home, but yet I feel my father very near to me. And it just, I couldn't control my emotions at that time. It really was a beautiful experience for me.
Oh, I think it was the high point of the entire trip, being here in Riga, and especially singing with the choir.
The Aurora anchored in historic Neva River in Leningrad near the Winter Palace, which was the home of Russian czars. The Aurora, which fired the cannon that signaled the beginning of the October Revolution in 1917. It was also a cannon shot heard round the world.
Well, now we begin our excursion around the city, Leningrad. And I want to tell you a few words about our city, about its past and about its present. Our city was founded by Peter the Great in 1703 on the 16th of May. And this day is now celebrated as the birthday of our city.
The Winter Palace was stormed by revolutionaries in the famous October Revolution. It is now a world-famous museum known as the Hermitage. The people of Leningrad defended the city during a 900-day siege against the Nazis in World War II. On the very ground where the battle took place, high-rise apartments now stand. One of the casualties of that siege was the Summer Palace. And although it was a major symbol of Tsarism, it was one of Stalin's first restoration projects.
it's too much for me to even imagine. I just can't imagine somebody being that rich, having that much money to just build all of this. It's fantastic. It's beautiful. It's just, when I got here, it was like a world all of its own. I didn't think of it as being a communist country at all.
We are very happy to be here this evening in Leningrad. We are, as John Mills told you, the Trenton State College Singers.
Мы очень рады приветствовать вас сегодня здесь, в прекрасном городе Ленинград. Как уже сказал Джон,
Little boy blue, come blow your horn, come blow your horn, come blow your horn. The cows in the meadow, the sheep in the corn, the sheep in the meadow, the sheep in the corn. Where is the little boy that looks after the sheep, after the things that cows does Come to us, Irina.
No.
For she's a jolly good girl, which nobody can deny.
Now, there are some of us that want to give you a little gift of remembrance, and I don't know what all they are, but there's one.
Oh, thank you very
Irina,
much.
after seeing you at the International Club boogieing, I thought you'd enjoy that.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you.
I think music unites all our people, especially our countries, because our countries, all of our people are interested in music, in folk music, and that's why music is I can say that music is now the media of all our countries, of all our people.
Oh, thank you.
You're stuck with it, lady.
It was very interesting for me to learn some expressions of their everyday life. For example, knock it off, Turkey.
What a wonderful welcome we got when we arrived in Romania. It was a whole new country, a whole new feeling, and we met our Romanian guide, Christina, for the first time. We were still in a strange country, but there were smiles and handshakes, somehow an atmosphere more like what we are used to. We felt at home in the sprawling, modern industrial city of Pitești, dotted with factories and high-rise apartment buildings. Our first meeting with a Romanian choir turned out to be a group of lovely ladies, all workers from a nearby factory.
on the behalf of the young youth organization here and of those working in the club, they are offering the group and to Mr. Myers 2 records with songs, patriotic songs and songs written and sang by the young people.
Wonderful.
Oh, thank you.
We had begun to learn a traditional song of friendship, Mulța Trăiască, and even with our halting Romanian, we sang it a good many times throughout the rest of our trip. From village to village and town to town, we became more and more aware of the beauty of Romania. Here is an Eastern Orthodox church. The architecture reflects a Byzantine influence. We arrived on the day of a county-wide festival. It wasn't even part of our tour, but we joined in the celebration anyway.
Folk festival, they were doing their dances, and they pulled us in and made us dance along with them, and they didn't have any inhibitions about being really friendly and just inviting us to participate in their little dance and everything. It was just beautiful.
Masa mare să o cinstiți, să ne apucă buzuganul, bogăție și la lui, hurra!
Da. Păi nu de tot! Numai pentru poze, numai pentru poze.
So this is Calimanes, that health resort I was telling you about. And they have several springs like this ones with different minerals inside. Even from abroad are coming here because they are very good, very much appreciated, where they get a very good treatment with hot baths and mud and all kinds of mineral waters and all that. And people from here, I mean, they don't have to pay that much because sometimes the trade unions are paying for them. So.
Dorinda said it tastes like rotten eggs.
It tastes like rotten egg smell.
Да. Да, nu mai luați, am luat eu și nu pot să le țin. Am dat banii. Nu am,
The Hurej Monastery outside of Rymniku-Vilchia dates from the 17th century. We were impressed by the beautiful stonework and beautiful pastel hues in the paintings.
Just everything around me just doesn't give me that impression of being in a communist country at all, the way that I felt communism was, like the impression I had of communism. It just doesn't apply here. It just seems like it's either passed it by or whatever, but it just doesn't seem to be like that.
Downtown in Cebu was very busy. It was like little shops and markets and whatnot, and it was kind of like one of our shopping malls, except that it was just more country-ish. Everything was out and open, people running around and talking and socializing. Everybody was walking around and not driving their cars and up to the place in the parking lot and all that good stuff. That area there now is kind of like what our shopping places used to be like many years ago in this country.
There were plenty of people shopping around, and all the stores seemed to be pretty well stocked. It was sort of like a fantasy land. It wasn't really, I didn't picture myself shopping in a shopping center type thing. Everything was sort of set up, and you went from shop to shop, very leisurely, very casually. There were some Western products there. We noticed some cheeses and different imported goods also.
I really can't
But baby, it's cold outside.
I bet you go
But baby, it's cold outside.
This evening has
Been hoping that you drop in. I'll hold your hands, they're just like ice. Beautiful, what's your hurry? Listen to the fireplace roar. Beautiful, what's your
Maybe just to have to drink
Put some records on my phone. Baby, you freeze out there.
Say what's in this drink?
It's up to your knees out there.
I wish I knew
Your eyes are like starlight now. I'll take your hat, your hair looks
I
swell.
ought to say no, no, no.
Mind if I move in
At least I'm
closer?
gonna say that I tried.
What's the sense of losing my pride? Oh, baby, don't hold out. Baby, it's cold
We would like to extend some greetings to you from the governor of our state, New Jersey. Cultural, artistic, and educational endeavors, the bonds of friendship which exist among all nations become evident, and differences in language, custom, and tradition become unimportant. It is signed Brendan T. Byrne, Governor, State of New Jersey.
Domnul Gordon Myers prezintă un salut din partea guvernatorului statului New Jersey, Brendan Byrne. De câte ori oamenii se adună împreună
Când s-au gândit un mare jupânu gazdare, hai dorinde jupânu gazdare, căieri cu feciorii săi, jupânu gazdare, hai dorinde jupânu gazdare. Și că s-o dă supare, jupânu gazdare, hai dorinde jupânu gazdare. Hai corinde jupânu gazdar, eu semănatul, Doamne, jupânu gazdar, hai corinde jupânu gazdar. Vede se cerară, Doamne, jupânu gazdar, piciorile în gară, Doamne, jupânu gazdar, hai corinde jupânu gazdar. Cei morali buni apoi bine macinară ei, cele fete bune ele, bine îl cerne și ele, o la vârfă cele mare, jupânu gazdar, hai corinde jupânu gazdar. Pe masă-l pomele mare, jupânu gazdare, hai corinde jupânu gazdar. La mulți ani!
They still dress the way you remember seeing gypsies in picture books. And you see them on the street corners with their hats and their long dresses and the ruffled aprons and nothing you'd expect to see.
The architecture is gorgeous. Wherever you go, I just love it. And they seem to be doing a lot of building, like not reconstructing, but just building new places. And they're treating us like, you know, kings and queens. It's unbelievable.
This is Bran Castle.
Unul din cele mai bine conservate monumente arhitectonice din România.
Is one of the best preserved castles in Romania.
Construit la sfârșitul secolului al XIV-lea.
Built at the end of the 14th century.
Intrarea către Țara Bârsei, intrarea către principalul oraș al țării Bârsei, către Brașov, intrare pe care o formează aici, în apropierea castelului, pasul Bran-Lucăr-Câmpul Lung, unul din drumurile de legătură între Transilvania și țara românească.
So this is one of the main roads that linked Wallachia to Transylvania, and this castle was designed in order to defend the inhabitants living in Brașov.
The city of Brasov dates back to the 13th century. Today, this could be the scene in the park on a Sunday afternoon in almost any small town in America. was a brief organ recital in the Black Church, so named because of a devastating fire that burned it out several centuries ago.
Another Negro spiritual called Hold On. It's arranged by Eugene Simpson, and our soloist is Elena Ellis.
Bine grupul, solistă Elena Ellis.
Keep your hand on the plow. Hold on, hold on. Now, let me come in. The doors are shut, no, the windows in.
When I got up and sang in front of the audience, my spiritual hold on, I looked into the faces of the Russians and Romanians. In their faces I could see strain, hardworking people, but not that of displeasure with me singing. One conclusion I found was that they seemed to understand, even though I was singing this spiritual in English, and they seemed to grasp the meaning and the feeling behind it.
After we sang in that concert hall at Brasov, it was just fantastic. All the townspeople, the young people our age, came up to talk to us, and I kind of felt like a big star, because they were asking for autographs and all kinds of stuff like that. You know, it wasn't like they were sent there or anything by the government. It was like they were just there, and everybody was having a good time. So what? And it was just a happy experience.
Here are Hungarian, German, and Romanian. And I am a Hungarian girl.
I'm Polish and American.
Yeah.
It's very nice to meet you.
Yeah.
I wish we could stay longer. We have to rush to our hotel.
How many days are you staying here?
We only came this afternoon, and we have to leave tomorrow morning.
The Romanians' hospitality was heartwarming, also stomach-warming. At a special festive dinner at Poiana Brasov, we had a gastronomic experience we won't forget for a long time.
Liver, then it was, I think, beef, then it was marrow, and the thing you told me about, I don't remember the name you gave it to it.
The liver. Is that liver?
The testicles I ate, I didn't really know what it was. I didn't especially like it, but I did eat it anyway.
Mountain horses, right. No, that's quite all right, Nick. We have another name. We call it puduli in Romania.
It's a great delicacy.
I think when you travel, this is part of, you know, getting to know the land and getting to know the people, is getting to see what they value in food.
The Romanian government is now promoting tourism on an international scale, and the Black Sea area is beautifully developed.
We are the Trenton State College Singers.
We sang our final concert in an outdoor amphitheater at a huge youth camp within sight of the Black Sea.
And to have our concert, our final concert of our tour in Romania here in Kostanetsky very much.
We're in Konstantinesh.
Kostanitsa.
Kostanetsky.
Yes, I couldn't remember.
When I fall on my knees with my face to the rising sun, oh Lord, have mercy on me.
As I came out to sing the solo for this song, Let Us Break Bread Together, it was really hard. We had been traveling, moving almost every day for the past week, doing a concert every night with little time to settle down in between. And here I was out looking into the sun trying to sing a concert. I think the whole group was really tired too. It was easy to see as we were wandering around, as we were riding in the bus, and they were all sleeping.
Beside the clapping and the warm smiles of the faces, we were greeted with flowers after some of our concerts. It was the most surprise to all of us. I think we all really appreciated, especially Doc. But one thing, it was a different custom, a liked custom, to say thank you.
Thank you very... Oh, I'm sorry. What am I doing? Thank you very much. That's very sweet of you.
At this youth resort on the Black Sea, we met a prize-winning choir named Song, and song they did. We spent that evening with them drinking Pepsis, singing for each other, and getting to know each other.
Last night was one of those really rare experiences. I think it was one of the best experiences we've had since we've come over, because we were able to actually sit down for more than a half an hour and talk to some people our own age, talk to people who were interested in doing the same things we were doing. And I thought it was great the way that we just broke into songs together, and we knew some songs that we sang together. And then afterwards we went off together to a disco, and I just think it was really a good experience. That's one of the things that we came for. After seeing the people and being around the people, I've realized that the system that we have of democracy is really worth working at to make it what it should be, and what I think that the original men who put it together meant it to be. And especially after visiting the Soviet Union, I really believe that.
I think this is a trip that we will be evaluating for many years to come. We're still just off a plane in many ways.
And it sort of made me realize where I am, the country I live in and the kind of freedoms I have.
And if we're going to make a contribution to this program of friendship in foreign countries, then I think we make a contribution to our own country. And we look at our own country
much differently when we come back home.
I learned an awful lot about the other people and about myself and about the people I went with.
And it's hard to come to an opinion when you are gone only 3 weeks. That's just a drop in the bucket to really know a culture.
That 3-week trip was just like a glimpse of what's going on in another part of the world, and I'd like to do it in a different kind of atmosphere, more relaxed maybe, and just to get to know the people a little more.
Yankee Doodle, be divine, Yankee Doodle dandy, repeat the victory and the vine. Sing Yankee Doodle dandy.
The idea of giving thanks is perhaps as old as humankind itself. An ancient hymn composed to the Egyptian god Re some 1500 years BC includes these lines: "Ascribe ye the praise to Re, give ye thanks unto him in his beneficent form." The Bible mentions that we should give thanks in psalms and hymns and spiritual songs, singing with grace in your hearts. Except for a few lines from the Psalms, our narrative is all but modern, beginning with Christopher Columbus. The hymns and fuguing tunes were sung and published in America before 1805, all to express thanks for life and living in freedom in these United States of America. Ye tribes of Adam, join with heaven and earth and seas, and offer notes divine to your Creator's praise. Ye holy throng of angels bright, ye holy throng of angels bright, in worlds of light begin the song. Ye holy throng of angels bright, ye holy throng of angels bright, in worlds of light begin the song. Oh, come, let us sing unto the Lord. Let us come before his presence with thanksgiving. Praise him with the sound of the trumpet. Let everything that hath breath praise the Lord. Blow ye the trumpet, blow, blow ye the trumpet, blow, ye gladsome solemn sound. Let all the nations know, to earth's remotest bound, the year of Jubilee is come, the year of Jubilee is come. Return, return, ye ransomed sinners,
sinners home. The year of Jubilee is come. The year of Jubilee is come. Return, return, ye ransomed sinners home. The islands are as fertile as they can be, surrounded by harbors, numerous, very safe and broad, and not to be compared with any others that I have seen anywhere. Many large, wholesome rivers flow through this land, and there are also many lofty mountains in it. All the islands are most beautiful, and they are full of trees of the greatest variety, which brush at the stars, green and beautiful. Some of them were in bloom, and some were loaded with fruit. A nightingale was singing, and there were countless other birds of many kinds in the month of November, when I myself was making my way through them. The hill of Zion yields 1,000 sacred sweets. Before we reach the heavenly fields, before we reach the heavenly fields, oh, walk the golden streets. Before we reach the heavenly fields, before we reach the heavenly fields, oh, walk the golden streets. After a long beating at sea, they fell with that land which is called Cape Cod, the which being made and certainly known to be it, they were not a little joyful. Being thus arrived in good harbor and brought safe to land, they fell upon their knees and blessed the God of heaven, who had brought them over the vast and furious ocean and delivered them from all the perils and miseries thereof, again to set feet on the firm and stable earth, their proper element. Almighty King of heaven above, eternal source of truth and love, and Lord of all below, with reverence and religious fear, permit thy suppliants to draw near, and at thy feet to bow. With reverence and religious fear, permit thy suppliants to draw near, and at thy feet to bow.
A great drought continued from 3 weeks in May till about the middle of July, without any rain, and with great heat for the most part, insomuch as the corn began to wither away. Though it was set with fish, the moisture whereof helped it much. They set apart a solemn day of humiliation to seek the Lord by humble and fervent prayer in this great distress. Early, my God, without delay, I haste to seek thy face. My thirsty spirits faint away without thy cheering grace. So pilgrims on the scorching sand, beneath a burning sky, beneath a burning sky, long for a cooling stream, long for a cooling stream at hand, and they must drink or die. And God was pleased to give them a gracious and speedy answer. For all the morning it was clear weather and very hot, and not a cloud or any sign of rain to be seen. Yet toward evening it began to overcast, and shortly after to rain, with such sweet and gentle showers as gave them cause of rejoicing and blessing God. It came without either wind or thunder or any violence, and by degrees in its abundance, as that the earth was thoroughly wet and soaked therewith. His blessing caused a fruitful and liberal harvest, to their no small comfort and rejoicing. For which mercy, in time convenient, they also set apart a day of thanksgiving. Give thanks to God, invoke his name, and tell the world his grace. Sound through the earth his deeds of fame, that all may seek his face. Like pilgrims through the countries round, securely they removed, and haughty kings that on them frowned, severely be reproved. Our harvest being gotten in, our governor sent 4 men unfowling, so that we might after a more special manner rejoice together after we had gathered the fruit of our labors. They four in one day killed as much fowl as, with a little help besides, served the company almost a week, at which time, amongst other recreations, we exercised our arms, many of the Indians coming amongst us, and amongst the rest their greatest King Massasoit, with some 90 men, whom for 3 days we entertained and feasted. And they went out and killed 5 deer, which they brought to the plantation and bestowed on our governor. And although it be not always so plentiful as it was at this time with us, yet by the goodness of God we are so far from want that we often wish you partakers of our plenty. Behold a lovely vine here in this desert ground. The blossom shoot and promise fruit, and tender grapes are found. The blossom shoot and promise fruit, and tender grapes are found. Its circling branches rise and shade the neighboring lands. With lovely charms she spread her arms, with clusters in her hands. Yea, glory to God for his redeeming grace. The blessed dove came from above to save a ruined race. The blessed dove came from above to save a ruined race. The council, taking into their serious consideration the low estate of the churches of God throughout the world, and the increase of sin and evil amongst ourselves, God's hand following us for the same, do therefore appoint the 22nd of this instant September to be a day of public humiliation throughout this jurisdiction, and do commend the same to the several churches, elders, ministers, and people, solemnly to keep it accordingly, hereby prohibiting all servile work on that day. By the council, Edward Rawson, Secretary. Children of the heavenly King, as you journey, sweetly sing. Sing your Savior's worthy praise, glorious in his works and ways. O ye brethren, joyful stand on the borders of your land. Jesus Christ, your Father's Son, bids you undismayed go on. Lord, obediently we'll go, gladly leaving all below. Only thou our leader be, and we still will follow thee. As the next day was Thanksgiving, we had an excellent supper. Our landlord told us that we must not leave his house till we had taken breakfast with him. And the next morning we had a genuine New Jersey breakfast consisting of buckwheat flapjacks, flowing with butter and honey, and a capital dish of chocolate. We determined not to hurry ourselves so long as the Thanksgiving lasted. Through all this world below, God we see all around. Search hills and valleys through, there he's found. In growing fields of corn, the lily and the thorn, the pleasant and forlorn, all declare God is there. In meadows dressed in green, there he's seen. Conceiving God to be the fountain of wisdom, I thought it right and necessary to solicit his assistance for obtaining it. To this end, I formed the following little prayer, which was prefixed to my tables of examination for daily use. O powerful goodness, bountiful Father, merciful guide, increase in me that wisdom which discovers my truest interest. Strengthen my resolutions to perform what that wisdom dictates. Accept my kind offices to thy other children as they only return in my power for thy continued favors to me. Let tyrants shake their iron rod, and slavery clank her galling chains. We fear them not, we trust in God, New England's God forever reigns. What grateful offering shall we bring? What shall we render to this Lord? Loud hallelujah, let us sing, and praise his name on every chord. I now make it my earnest prayer that God would have you and the state over which you preside in his holy protection, that he would incline the hearts of the citizens to cultivate a spirit of subordination and obedience to government, to entertain a brotherly affection and love for one another, for their fellow citizens of the United States at large, and particularly for their brethren who have served in the field. And finally, that he would most graciously be pleased to dispose us all to do justice, to love mercy, and to demean ourselves with that charity, humility, and pacific temper of mind, which were the characteristics of the divine author of our blessed religion, and without an humble imitation of whose example in these things we can never hope to be a happy nation. From the first Pilgrim observance in 1621 to the 9 years before and during the American Revolution, when the Continental Congress declared days of fast and prayer and days of thanksgiving, we have turned to Almighty God to express our gratitude for the bounty and good fortune we enjoy as individuals and as a nation. America truly has been blessed.
Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah.
In words, in music.
Along with Captain Gooding.
New Jersey in the American Revolution.
And there we saw the men and boys.
Yankee Doodle fought here.
As thick as hasty pudding. Yankee Doodle, keep it up. Yankee Doodle dandy. Mind the music and the step, and with the girls be handy. Many soon know which for our ride, when we shall rule the nation.
Hello, I'm Gordon Myers, professor of music at Trenton State College. This is the 4th of July, 1980. Exactly 6 years ago tonight, Yankee Doodle Fought Here was premiered at the Open Air Theater in the Washington Crossing State Park in New Jersey. You're about to see a videotape of Yankee Doodle Fought Here as sung by the Trenton State College singers under my direction. This tape was made several years ago here at Trenton State during the first months that the Media Center's television production service was in operation. Yankee Doodle Fought Here is made up of choral music which was composed, published, and sung in America before 1800. And the brief bits of spoken history that you will hear were actually said or written by people who lived in colonial and revolutionary times. The work drew $60,000 in grant monies from the New Jersey Bicentennial Commission, from the New Jersey Historical Commission, and Trenton State College. Most of that $60,000 went to the students who gave up a day a week to go on tour. Between September 1974 and the day after Christmas 1976, the Trenton State College singers made 97 one-day tours, traveled over 10,000 miles in New Jersey, and presented 226 performances of Yankee Doodle Fought Here before more than 84,000 school children and adults in celebration of our country's 200th birthday. We sang on the west steps of our nation's capital in Washington, D.C. We sang in the foyer of the Kennedy Center in Washington. And we were featured at the National Convention of the Music Educators National Conference in Atlantic City, to name but a few of the appearances made in addition to the touring program. The LP recording and book of Yankee Doodle Fought Here were published in 1975 by DPR Publishers, a New Jersey firm located in Newfield. And they have found their way into many school and college libraries throughout New Jersey and the neighboring states. So here now is Yankee Doodle Fought Here.
Only 2 days after the Declaration of Independence was signed, a 15-year-old farm boy joined the Connecticut State Troops. His name was Joseph Plum Martin. He spent 7 years in the Revolutionary War, and during most of that time he marched and fought right here in New Jersey. Let's call this young revolutionary soldier Yankee Doodle. Tell us, Private Yankee Doodle, about your enlistment.
I was plowing in the field about a half-mile from home when all of a sudden bells fell to ringing and 3 guns fired in succession down in the village. I found that soldiers were in requisition.
Well, how did it happen you signed up?
A dollar deposited upon the drumhead was taken up as soon as placed there, and the holder's name taken, and he enrolled with orders to equip himself as quick as possible. My spirits began to revive at the sight of the money offered.
Well, how did your family react when they heard about it?
My grandparents fit me out in order with arms, clothing, and cake and cheese in plenty, not forgetting to put my pocket Bible into my knapsack. Good old people. I sincerely thank them for their kindness and love to me.
Rebellion and the Revolutionary War marked the beginning of the end of colonial life in America. Here's a bit of musical whimsy about three rogues who got into trouble in good old colony times, first because they could not sing, and then because they were caught stealing.
In good old colony times, when we were under the king, three roguish chaps fell into mishaps because they could not sing. Because they could not sing. Because they could not sing. Three roguish chaps fell into mishaps because they could not sing. The first he was a miller, and the second he was a weaver, and the third he was a little tailor. Three roguish chaps together. Three roguish chaps together. Three roguish chaps together. And the third he was a little tailor. Three roguish chaps together. Now the miller he stole corn, and the weaver he stole yarn, and the little tailor so what cloth for? To keep these three rogues warm. To keep these three rogues warm. To keep these three rogues warm. And the little tailor so what cloth for? To keep these three rogues warm. The miller got drowned in his dam. The weaver got hung in his yarn. And the devil cut his corn, the little tailor with the broadcloth under his arm. The miller got drowned in his dam. The weaver got hung in his yarn. And the devil cut his corn, the little tailor with the broadcloth under his arm. In good old colony times.
There had been trouble between England and its American colonies for some time. In March of 1775, Patrick Henry spoke before the Virginia Assembly.
I ask gentlemen, sir, what means this martial array if its purpose be not to force us to submission? Can gentlemen assign any other possible motive for it? Has Great Britain any enemy in this quarter of the world to call for all this accumulation of navies and armies? No, sir, she has none. They are meant for us. They can be meant for no other. Gentlemen may cry, peace, peace. But there is no peace. The war has actually begun. Why stand we here idle? What is it that gentlemen wish? What would they have? Is life so dear, or peace so sweet, as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery? Forbid it, Almighty God! I know not what course others may take, but for me, give me liberty, or give me death. Lo, ye lo, ye lo, ye.
Earlier, the British had passed the Stamp Act, which put a tax on all documents, newspapers, and such in America. John Adams called the Stamp Act
that enormous engine fabricated by the British Parliament for battering down all the rights and liberties of America.
James Otis said,
taxation without representation is tyranny.
And Private Yankee Doodle wrote,
I remember the stir in the country occasioned by the Stamp Act, but I was so young that I did not understand the meaning of it. I likewise remember the destruction of the tea at Boston and elsewhere. I was then 13 or 14 years old.
The citizens of Greenwich, New Jersey protested the tax on tea. A number of men dressed up as Indians seized a large supply of tea in Daniel Bowen's house and burned it in a nearby field. This was about a year after the famous Boston Tea Party. New Jersey's Philip Freneau, one of early America's outstanding poets, wrote a ditty about the hated tax on tea.
When a certain great king, whose initial is G, shall force stamps upon paper and folks to drink tea, when these folks burn his tea and stamp paper like stubble, you may guess that this king is then coming to trouble.
In this song, Revolutionary Tea, the old lady who lived over the sea, or the mother, is Great Britain, and her daughter refers to the American colonies. There was no lady lived over the sea, and she was an island queen. Her daughter lived off in a new country with an ocean of water between. The old lady's pockets were full of gold, but never contented was she. So she called on her daughter to pay her a tax, and 3 pence a pound on her tea.
Oh, 3 pence a pound on her tea.
Now, mother, dear mother, the daughter replied, I shan't do the thing you ask. I'm willing to pay a fair price for the tea, but never the 3-penny tax. You shall, quoth the mother, and reddened with rage, for you're my own daughter, you see. And sure 'tis quite proper the daughter should pay her mother a tax on her tea.
Her mother a tax on her tea.
The tea was conveyed to the daughter's door, all down by the ocean side, and the bouncing girl poured out every pound in the dark and boiling tide. And then she called out to the island queen, oh mother, dear mother, quoth she, your tea you may have, it is steeped enough, but never a tax from me.
But never a tax from me.
Freedom was the theme of a New Jersey document forged in 1677, almost 100 years before the Declaration of Independence. From concessions and agreements of the proprietors, freeholders, and inhabitants of the province of West New Jersey in America.
Those who govern are not to impose or suffer to be imposed any tax, custom or subsidy, tollage, assessment, or any other duty whatsoever upon the said province and inhabitants thereof without their own consent first had.
Peter Kalm, a scientist from Sweden, visited North America 1748-1751. He wrote in his diary,
I have been told by Englishmen, and not only by such that were born in America, but also by those who came from Europe, that the English colonies in North America, in the space of 30 or 50 years, would be able to form a state by themselves, entirely independent of old England.
Let tyrants shake their iron rod, and slavery clank her galling chains. We fear them not, we trust in God. New England's God forever reign.
William Livingston was elected the state's first governor by the New Jersey legislature on August 31st, 1776. William Livingston, commenting on the virtues of individual liberty, said,
Liberty gives an inexpressible charm to all our enjoyments. It imparts a relish to the most indifferent pleasure, and renders the highest gratification the more consummately delightful.
Our troops advance with martial noise. Their veterans sleep before our youth, and generals yield to fearless boys.
There was nothing new in the Crown's fear of freedom.
A century earlier, King William and Queen Mary struck out at the colonists' right to assemble together. Their edict read in part,
that no singing, fiddling, piping, or any music, dancing, or reveling, either singly or together in company, shall be suffered or exercised in any tavern or other public licensed house on penalty of 10 shillings, to be paid by the master keeper of said house, and 5 shillings by each person offending.
However, liberty and freedom were discussed at a town meeting in Salem, New Jersey, July 15th, 1774,
to consider some proper measures to be taken in support of American freedom at this alarming crisis.
The people in Salem condemned the acts and restrictive measures as an
absolute infringement of the natural rights of the subject and a tendency to enslave America.
They asserted their belief and a need to
promote without delay a firm union of all Americans, without which it would probably soon cease to be a country of freedom.
New Jersey delegates to the Second Continental Congress in Philadelphia signed the Declaration of Independence together. The first was 45-year-old
Richard Stockton, whose wife named their spacious estate Morven. We know Morven in the town of Princeton today as New Jersey's official home for its governors.
Under Stockton's name appears that of
John Witherspoon, president of the College of New Jersey in Princeton, and the only clergyman to sign the Declaration of Independence.
The third to sign was
Francis Hopkinson, the youngest of the 5 delegates at 38. He is best known as a statesman, writer, and musician.
The fourth was
John Hart, a prosperous farmer and noted horse breeder from Hopewell. Hart was Speaker of the Assembly in the New Jersey Legislature.
And the fifth man to sign the Declaration of Independence for New Jersey was
Abraham Clark, a country lawyer affectionately known as the poor man's counselor. After signing the Declaration of Independence, he wrote in a letter, "We can only die but once. We are now embarked on a most tempestuous course. It has gone so far that we must now be a free, independent state or a conquered country."
5 New Jersey statesmen put their signatures on the line for freedom. Remember well their names:
Richard Stockton,
John Witherspoon,
Francis Hopkinson,
John Hart,
and Abraham Clark.
And John Dickinson's The Liberty Song took on a new meaning.
Come join hand in hand, brave Americans all, and rouse your bold hearts at their liberty's call. No tyrannous acts shall suppress your just claim, or stain with dishonor America's name. In freedom we're born, and in freedom we'll live. Our purses are ready, steady, friends, steady. Not as slaves, but as free men, our money will give.
While John Adams labored in Philadelphia to help formulate the foundations of self-government, Mrs. Adams wrote to him on November 27, 1775, and expressed her concern regarding the ability of the Americans to set up their own form of government.
I wish I knew what mighty things we're fabricating. If a form of government is to be established here, what one will be assumed? Will it be left to our assemblies to choose one? And will not many men have many minds? And shall we not run into dissensions among ourselves? I am more and more convinced that man is a dangerous creature, and that power, whether vested in many or a few, is ever grasping, and like the grave cries, "Give, give." The great fish swallow up the small. If we separate from Britain, What code of laws will be established? How shall we be governed so as to retain our liberties? Can any government be free which is not administered by general stated laws? Who shall frame these laws? Who will give them force and energy? It is true, your resolutions as a body have hitherto had the force of laws, but will they continue to have? When I consider these things, and the prejudices of people in favor of ancient customs and regulations, I feel anxious for the fate of our monarchy, or democracy, or whatever is to take place.
And Abigail Adams suggested to her husband in a later letter,
In the new code of laws, which I suppose it will be necessary for you to make, I desire you remember the ladies, and be more generous and favorable to them than your ancestors.
In freedom we're born, and in freedom we live. Our purses are ready, steady, friends, steady, not as slaves, but as free men.
Men?
Free women, our lives we will give.
when John Hancock signed the Declaration of Independence, he signed his name in large letters, and then he said,
There! I guess King George will be able to read that.
and after Benjamin Franklin signed his name, he was heard to remark,
We must indeed all hang together, or most assuredly we will all hang separately.
In freedom we're born, and in freedom we live. Our purses are ready, steady, friends, steady, not as slaves, but as free men. Our lives we will give.
It's hard to imagine life in America the way it was 200 years ago, the way it was in New Jersey 200 years ago. Think of living without automobiles, super highways, trains, airplanes, life without radio, television, telephones, houses without electricity, refrigeration, or bathrooms. Would you believe that a trip by boat and by horse and wagon between Philadelphia and New York took 30 to 40 hours, and that was considered good time? Here is an advertisement which appeared in the Philadelphia Gazette in 1751.
This is to give notice to all persons that shall have occasion of transporting themselves, goods, wares, or merchandise from Philadelphia to New York, or from the latter place to the former, that by Joseph Borden there is a stage boat well fitted and kept for that purpose, and if wind and weather permit, will attend at the Crooked Billet Wharf in Philadelphia every Tuesday in every week, and proceed up to Bordentown on Wednesday.
And on Thursday morning, a stage wagon with a good awning kept by Joseph Richardson will be ready to receive them and proceed directly to John Clark's, opposite the city of Perth Amboy, who keeps a house of good entertainment.
And on Friday morning, a stage boat well fitted and kept by Daniel O'Brien will be ready to receive them and proceed directly to New York and give her attendance at the Whitehall Slip near the Half Moon Tavern. If people be ready at the stage, days and places, 'tis believed they may pass the quickest 30 or 40 hours, the cheapest and fastest way that has yet been made use of.
Also, people living on or near the road may have business done by letter, or otherwise due care will be taken in the delivery of letters, verbile messages, and carried by us.
And the advertisement was proudly signed
Joseph Borden,
Joseph Richardson,
Daniel O'Brien.
God we see all around, searches and valleys through there is found. In growing fields of corn, the lily and the fern, the pleasant and forlorn, all declare God is there. In meadows dressed in green, there we see springing waters rise, fountains flow, rivers run, long misty clouds the sky hides the sun. Then down the rain doth pour, the ocean it doth roar, and break upon the shore, all to praise in their lays our God that ne'er declines his designs.
Swedish scientist Peter Kalm visited what is now the capital of New Jersey in 1748, he observed,
Trenton is a long and narrow town, situated at some distance from the Delaware River on the sandy plain. It belongs to New Jersey, and they reckon it some 30 miles from Philadelphia. The houses are built partly of stone, though most of them are made of wood or planks, commonly 2 stories high, together with a cellar below the building and a kitchen underground close to the cellar. This place is reckoned very healthy. Our landlord told us that 22 years ago, when he first settled there was hardly more than 1 house.
This would make it the year 1726. The one house must have been William Trent's house, which was built in 1719.
But from that time on, Trenton has increased so much that there are at present nearly 100 houses.
Let my station be here in life, where I see the sacred Trinity. All agree in all the works He's made, the forest and the great. None let me be afraid, though I dwell in the hill, where nature's works declare God is there.
In riding through New Jersey, Peter Kalm described what he experienced and what he saw.
We rode in ordinary open wagons, which in stony places came near to Shaking River and Long Avenue. Otherwise, the better class of people traveled on their own horses, whether they rode in a wagon or a chaise, or on horseback. The latter is the more common method of traveling. The fields were sown with wheat, rye, corn, oats, and flax. The tulip trees did not appear on the road, but the people said there were some in the woods. The beaver trees were now in flower, and the fragrance of their blossoms had so perfumed the air that one could enjoy it before one approached the swamps. Near almost every farm was a spacious orchard full of peaches and apple trees. Whenever we passed by, we were welcome to go into the fine orchards and gather our hats and pockets full of the choicest fruits, without the owner so much as even looking at us.
Zion yields 1,000 sacred streets. Before we reach the heavenly fields, before we reach the heavenly fields, or walk the golden streets. Before we reach the heavenly fields, before we reach the heavenly fields, or walk the golden streets.
On July 9th, 1755, General Braddock was mortally wounded in a battle of the French and Indian War. A young officer, Colonel George Washington, then 23 years old, took command of General Braddock's army. He wrote to his mother on July 18th.
Honored Madam, as I doubt not but you have heard of our defeat, I have taken this earliest opportunity to give you some account of the engagement as it happened. Within 7 miles of the French fort on Wednesday the 9th, we were attacked by a body of French and Indians whose number I am certain did not exceed 300 men. Ours consisted of about 1,300 well-armed troops, chiefly of the English soldiers, who were struck with such panic that they behaved with more cowardice than it is possible to conceive. The officers behaved gallantly. The Virginia troops showed a good deal of bravery and were near all killed. The general was wounded, of which he died 3 days after. I luckily escaped without a wound, though I had 4 bullets through my coat and 2 horses shot under me.
A Virginia minister, Samuel Davis, in one of his sermons later that year, made a prophetic reference regarding the destiny of Washington when he spoke about the Battle of July 9th, 1755.
I may point out to the public that heroic youth, Colonel Washington, whom Providence has hitherto preserved in so signal a manner for some important service to his country.
before the Declaration of Independence was signed, New Jersey's poet Philip Freneau wrote in his American Liberty in 1775.
The time shall come when strangers rule no more, nor cruel mandate vex from Britain's shore, when commerce shall extend her shortened wing, and her free freights from every climate bring, when mighty towns shall flourish free and great, vast their dominion, opulent their state, when one vast cultivated region teems from ocean's edge to Mississippi streams, while each enjoys his vineyard's peaceful shade, and even the meanest has no cause to dread. Such is the life our foes with envy see. Such is the godlike glory to be free.
Greenwich, New Jersey-born Presbyterian minister Philip Vickers Fithian saw into the future. He saw America expanded and prosperous, for he wrote in his journal on June 1st, 1775.
Oh, America! With reverence I look forward and view thee in distinguished majesty. It is not rash to assert, without the aid of prophecy, that thy commerce and thy wealth and power are yet to rule the globe. The march of commerce and improvement to the westward is so rapid that soon, perhaps before the present century is quite filled up, we shall have towns overlooking the banks of the Pacific Ocean.
1 month after the Declaration of Independence was signed, the British arrived in America with some 32,000 troops. The American Army met them in Brooklyn Heights. Our young Connecticut farm boy was a soldier in that encounter on Long Island. Private Yankee Doodle reported.
We soon landed at Brooklyn upon the island. We now began to meet the wounded men, some with broken arms, some with broken legs, and some with broken heads. The sight of these a little daunted me and made me think of home. By the time we arrived, the enemy had driven our men into the creek, where such as could swim got across. Those that could not swim and could not procure anything to buoy them up, sunk.
The Americans were unsuccessful in Harlem Heights, in White Plains, and in New York on November 15th. The British took Fort Washington. This was one of the heaviest losses the Americans were to suffer in the entire war.
Oh, soldier Lord, thou hast me made, thou art my captain, king and head, and under thee I still would fight, the fight of faith all in thy sight. That I do just try, baby, to stand and fight the enemy, and when the alarms to call the Lord, they pass the word unto the guard.
We meet Captain Enoch Anderson.
And now commenced the memorable, the distressing retreat through New Jersey. We arrived at Brunswick broken down and fatigued, some without shoes, some had no shirts. This was the beginning of December, 1776.
A few days later, Captain Anderson reported.
The British were now in chase of us with 20,000 men within 3 miles of us. We continued our retreat. It was dusk before we got to Trenton. Here we stayed all night. In the afternoon of the next day, we crossed the Delaware into Pennsylvania, and in 2 hours afterwards, the British appeared on the opposite bank and cannonaded us. But we were in the woods and bushes, and none were wounded that I heard of.
As Washington, with his dwindling army, crossed the Delaware River a few miles north of Trenton, he wisely gathered up all the available boats and took them to the Pennsylvania side of the river to thwart any possible pursuit by the British.
Help me to keep my guardian test and march to right in holiness. Oh, make me pure and spotless too, and fit to stand the grand review. And when our general he is come, with sound of trumpet final doom, is then the enemy will get the rout, and we'll bind him to left about.
Thomas Paine, an Englishman who had joined the American cause for liberty and freedom, was a part of that retreat across New Jersey. Tom Paine wrote his famous Crises papers, which he began writing in Newark. And George Washington was so inspired by them that he had them read to the soldiers. And Tom Paine's words were an inspiration, even to those who had no shoes no food or blankets.
These are the times that try men's souls. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will, in this crisis, shrink from the service of his country. But he who stands it now deserves the love and thanks of man and woman. Tyranny, like hell, is not easily conquered. Yet we have this consolation with us, that the harder the conflict, the more glorious the triumph.
Grant me the arrows of thy word, thy spear is powerful to exalt, to slay my foes where'er they be, and own the victory won by thee.
The blight and hardships of war were upon us, and yet somehow life continued. Families had to be clothed, children taught and fed. Here's a lesson on behavior from chapter 46 of the Child Instructor.
Let dogs delight to bark and bite, for God hath made them so. Let bears and lions growl and fight, for 'tis their nature too. But children, you should never let such angry passions rise. Your little hands were never made to tear each other's eyes.
And a piece of a broadside ballad might be hidden under the pillow.
Old Adam was the first of men. That everybody knows. He never paid a tailor's bill because he wore no clothes, nor French kid gloves upon his hands, as you may well suppose, nor a dandy collar round his neck, nor shoes to hide his toes. Old Adam was a gentleman. That everybody knows. He never tore his shirt or pants because he wore no clothes.
And there were games and songs.
Little boy blue, come blow your horn. Little boy blue, come blow your horn. Come blow your horn. Come blow your horn. The cows in the meadow, the sheep's in the meadow, the sheep's in the meadow, the sheep's in the corn. Where is the little boy that looks after the sheep? Under the leaves that fast asleep. Fast asleep.
And here is a song about an early American insect, the bee.
As Jupiter in the garden strayed, transported with the damask shade, a little bee, unseen among the silken breeze, his fingers stung. A little bee, unseen among the silken breeze, his fingers stung. The tears his beauteous cheeks run down, his thorns he blows a burning wound, then flying to a neighboring grove, thus plaintive told the Queen of Love, then flying to a neighboring grove, thus plaintive told the Queen of Love. Ah, me, I die, a little insect winged to fly. It's called the bee on yonder plain. It stung me, oh, I die with pain. It's called the bee on yonder plain. It stung me, oh, I die with pain. Then Venus, smile, leave us rejoice. Give you my dear such anguish find, from the resentment of a bee. Think what those fears were stung
A couple of weeks ago.
by thee.
The final performance of Yankee Doodle Fought Here, the 226th, took place in Trenton as part of the 10 Crucial Days celebration. The performance was 200 years to the day after General George Washington's spectacular victory in Trenton, and it occurred literally only a few hundred yards from the spot where the famous battle took place. At the conclusion of that final performance, John T. Cunningham, chairman of the New Jersey Historical Commission, gave us an award. The New Jersey Historical Commission hereby extends congratulations to Professor Gordon Myers and the Trenton State College Bicentennial Singers for their 3-year tour of New Jersey, 1974-1976, in performance of Yankee Doodle Fought Here, a musical narrative program produced by Professor Myers, sponsored by Trenton State College, the New Jersey Bicentennial Commission, and the New Jersey Historical Commission. Presented at the final performance, December 26, 1976. John T. Cunningham, chairman. I'm especially indebted to the late Miss Dorothy Lucas, member of the Washington Crossing Association and former state librarian, to Mr. Bernard Bush, executive director of the New Jersey Historical Commission, for his vision, and to Clayton R. Brower, then president of Trenton State College. And of course, thanks to the nearly 100 students who at one time or another sang and acted in Yankee Doodle Fought Here. See you at the Tricentennial.